the place where you learn how to reach more people online, build real influence, and attract ideal clients. And we've got a really fun episode today. Our guest today has one of the craziest stories I've ever heard. He is a best-selling author now and a financial mentor. He's the author of Entrepreneurial Money Secrets. But he has an insane backstory of learning financial stuff from people that have been to prison. We're going to talk about his time spent there, what led to that, how he essentially turned his life completely around and what he's doing now, just the journey and the path. It's one of the most amazing turnaround stories you probably ever hear. So stay tuned for that. We'll bring him in a second. Now, before we get to Andrew, we have, yes, the man with the long fingers who's constantly pointing at the camera, my illustrious colleague and co-host, Greg McDaniel. What's up today?
I'm not pointing at the camera. I'm pointing at you to shut up, Johnson. I'm talking. It's big boy time. Mm-hmm. No, I can't wait. We're going to have a lot of fun. We were laughing our asses off on the pre-show. Gene's head is balder than normal. It is just a great, great day. And Matt still looks like the lead singer from a very well-known band. And we just don't know how he keeps that look up.
Maroon 5.
Maroon 5. Yes, thank you, Maroon 5.
So thank God it's not Nickelback.
Hey, it's my favorite fucking band. Okay,
if we go back to long hair pictures, it is Nickelback. When you had long hair, definitely was Nickelback.
Yes, it was.
But no, yeah, I'm doing great. It's a great Friday, except for the fact we have literally got a message from my girlfriend a second ago from the SF Gate. It says San Francisco Bay Area choked by toxic smoke filling in the air. I'm like, no wonder my throat hurts. Mm-hmm, all right. Mm-hmm. But
does that mean you're going to talk any less on this episode?
No shot.
Apparently not. But he dropped off. That's hilarious. What perfect timing. All right. So guys, we're having, we may have some technical issues on this episode with Greg's feed. We'll see. But first of all, that is Greg. Greg is back. And then Gene Volpe, the evil bald ninja, the marketing expert. What's up, man?
My good friend. Listen, you served up a perfect segue for yourself, and then you let it slide. You're talking about convicts in prison. What are you doing? I was like, wait, am I on? You're talking convicts in prison. You could have rolled right in. Speaking of convicts in prison, so my esteemed co-host, Greg McDaniel. And you let that slide, dude.
I did. I totally let it slide. I don't normally waste very many opportunities to insult and malign Greg, but man, I missed a gaping one there.
That was a golden one.
I mean, it's really not that Greg is an ex-convict. He just normally dresses and presents himself as one, and that's completely different. It's completely different.
Okay. And you know what? I am okay with that, Matt. And we really appreciate if you just stop harping on my past. Okay, we've talked about this in private. This is a hard time for me. I went through. Now, please shut the fuck up and be nice. Now, our guest is here. He's very kind. He's a scholar. He's a man. He's a young Christian warrior. He's out doing the Lord's work and just crushing it in when it comes to financing. So I'm going to do Matt's job. And Andrew, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Hey, thanks, guys. It's a pleasure to be here. Happy Friday.
And to you, my friend, we're going to have an absolute blast today. We cannot wait to sit at your feet and just take copious notes. I have my notepad out. So I've already taken a little bit of notes from our pre-show conversation. So please, sir, drop hammer.
Well, let's start with this, Andrew. Give us an idea. Just when people ask you what you do, like you're super unique. Like I don't know anybody else that does what you do. So when you run across somebody, especially an entrepreneur or business owner, what the heck do you tell them that you do on a daily basis?
In a nutshell, I teach business credit and funding for entrepreneurs, and specifically, startups, real estate investors, how to get access to capital, how to separate your personal and business credit.
Gotcha. Love it. All right. So first of all, where are you based out of? Like what part of the country are you in?
Los Angeles, Southern California. But we're nationwide. I mean, we operate everywhere.
Yeah. So you're out here on the West Coast with us. So it's not, we're accustomed on a lot of Fridays, and ends up being an East Coast, West Coast battle. And whoever's on the East Coast with Gene ends up on one side and then me and Greg on the other. But finally, we have a guest who's out here on the best coast with us. It's about damn time. All right. So we get to gang up on Gene today. We've got a lot of stuff to get into. So let's start with this. Give us an idea of just some of the things that, the mistakes that you see the average entrepreneur, kind of small business owner make just by being completely unaware of all this stuff. And we'll talk about kind of where you learned it and how you got the insights that you got, because that's the interesting part of the story. But what are just some of the big mistakes we're probably all making right now? Well,
to be honest, the money game or the game of entrepreneurism is something that the wealthy and high level people are taught, and they operate in that world. They're flowing and growing money. They're offsetting their tax liability. They're separating their personal and business to an extent that they're able to obtain large amounts of capital for whatever their endeavors are. The small to medium-sized entrepreneur is usually clueless until they're in the game about how to acquire capital and just how important it is to build your credit, both personal and business credit, in order to succeed in business. So, because we're all taught wrong. We're taught in reverse, is what I always say. Is like, if you grew up in my era, it was my dad always saying, "Oh, don't get in debt. Don't use your credit, protect it. Debt is bad. All debt is equal," and all this kind of stuff. This is nonsense, though, because if you're an entrepreneur, leveraging capital is one of the biggest parts of the game. And being able to, we're operating in capitalism. So knowing your game board pieces, your LLCs, your corporate entities, your land trust, your living trust, these are all instruments or game board pieces that we need to learn how to use. And leveraging your credit is the first step to building out your capital.
Gotcha. All right. So we know kind of we got a little sense of the way that you look at the world. Now, I love that because you look at it as like we're playing the wrong game. Like we're all on the same game board, but clearly we're not all playing the same game. And the people that are getting ahead are looking at the game board and looking at the game. They're playing a different game. They might be using some of the same pieces. A lot of times they're using pieces we're not even aware exist, or we're not really sure how to use them. And then they're essentially getting way ahead of everyone else by just looking at the game differently. So I want to get into that towards the like the second half of the conversation, but let's get into the crazy ride that is your life. And you start anywhere you want to, but just give me an overview of how in the world did you come to the point where you started to first get exposed to this way of looking at the world?
Yeah, man. As you and I talked about in our first conversation, I had a pretty unique experience because, let's see, back in 1993, now I'm going to age myself a little bit because we're going back in time, but I was a college kid, student, backpacked Europe when I was 22. I always joked that I was a millennium, even though I was in the Gen X generation, because I loved to travel. I was open-minded. I knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. Went to school basically to get an education, but not to get a job. So I was already looking at things in an unconventional way. And I was a social science major with a business minor. So I was kind of studying both people and the way the business world worked. Well, I also was kind of an adventurer. I got to know a lot of people through the years, and I loved people from different cultures. Met up with some Nigerians, and ended up doing a trip for them to Indonesia. So in the summer of 1993, it changed the course of my life. And what I say by that is I came back and I was exposed to a world, first an underground world, because I was in Chicago. I found myself in Chicago in a motel with a bag full of money, 30 grand back in the day, and I thought I was just going to pay for my school and everything. Little did I know that another person who had done a similar thing, well, the same thing essentially, but he got caught in the airport and ended up, let's just say, telling on the whole group of us. So, so there was about 9 of us in a conspiracy case. So I went from straight A student in school and kind of carefree and happy to looking at 10 years in mandatory minimum in federal prison.
Holy
so
cow.
Very sobering experience right there. So
I'm sure that saying "snitches get stitches" kind of rings in your head a little bit for this individual. Like, all right, let's find him. You know what?
Yeah. To be honest, definitely in the beginning, there was a lot of resentment, like, why am I getting pulled into somebody else's thing? But then at some point I had to kind of look in the mirror and say, wait a minute, I put myself in this position, and I had to take responsibility for it. So it started a journey. I didn't end up doing 10 years inside, but I did 10 years in the fact that I got arrested at the end of my 24th year. So just right before I turned 25, didn't get off federal probation until I was 35. So it took up a big chunk of my prime years, I would say, and paid a lot of prices, learned a lot of lessons, met some really interesting people through the whole process, got a background look into the federal criminal justice system. And so got exposed to some people that I probably would have never met not probably, for sure I wouldn't meet on the street, because these are like corporate CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, for instance, and mafia accountants and things like that, because I ended up doing time in a federal prison camp. You hear about Club Fed. So I ended up in one of those as I was a first-time offender. And, they didn't see me as a bad person, ultimately. They just saw me as a stupid kid that made a mistake. So I'm thankful for that. But I ended up going to a unique place where I got a unique education. Let's just say that. So
Well, the good thing about life is that everything happens for a reason. That's why people are listening to this right now. What you went through, obviously, was it the perfect thing in life? No, absolutely not. But did you get an experience and education that you couldn't even pay for? I mean, you paid for it in a different way. But I mean, when you look back on it, like everybody looks back on their life. Some people look back on it with regret, but in reality, everything you went through made you who you are today. Which now that's why you're here to share what you learned, which are invaluable life lessons and money lessons that people just don't teach. Right. Yeah. Especially to real estate agents. Right. And so you're here now as a value add service. So, I mean, you got to thank the big guy upstairs, you know, in the cat box in the sky, you know, for everything that kind of what took place. Right.
Man, I couldn't have said it better. I mean, that's so true. And the evolution of going through that whole process, it was hugely humbling, you know, to say the least. And I got to really learn some important life lessons through all of it. And you're right. Ultimately, you know, it was funny because even the people that busted me, the customs agents, like, he went through my whole life and he's like, what are you doing here? You know, I've been working in this for 20 years and you're one of those guys I don't even want to bust because I could tell you're not a bad guy, but here you are and you're in a really bad situation. He just advised me to use it as, you know, learn what I could and walk on from it and don't look back. And that's what I did. And,
Nice.
yeah, so you're right. I mean, now it's time to share it, to give back, you know, and I had been told through the whole experience, hey, you need to write a book about this. This is crazy, you know, and I think I was ashamed for a long time. And, you know, I went through a process of catharsis afterwards where when I got out of prison, that I had to get sober because I ended up being depressed and an alcoholic and I was burying myself. And then finally I got another opportunity. Actually, it's funny because we're doing this interview today. And yesterday marked 16 years of my sobriety. So I actually put the bottle down. I was in the hospital for 10 days. I got another chance at life. And that's when it made it my mission that I wanted to come out of it and give back, you know, and share some of the experiences, share some of these insights. Because like Matt had talked about when we first spoke, you know, nobody's really teaching it. Nobody's really teaching it in this way to the common entrepreneur, you know, and real estate professionals and things. And what I'm about to share, and if you read my book, you'll understand it's super powerful because you're learning how to leverage and look at operating in this world of capitalism in a whole different manner. And it can hugely accelerate your progress. You know, I promise you that, you know, so it's how the wealthy all play it already. So
yeah, that's where I wanted to take things a little bit next. Is tell me a little bit about some of those first people that you met. What caught your eye about them, and how did you kind of ingratiate yourself with them that they would kind of take you under their wing and start sharing some of the things that they know and do when they know this is not common knowledge?
Yeah, well, again, being in a federal prison camp was the first step. And you know, when I went in there, I was a kid still. I mean, if you're in your 20s, I still feel like we're kids, you know. So I was young and I was scared, and you know, you got to put up a front and put on a face, and I know exactly what it's like to be poker faced and act like. If you see pictures of me during that time, I look like a tough guy, and you know, it was just an image that you had to portray to survive. You know, really is what it come down to. But I went from a transition even through where I was locked up for the most part. One of many places, but where I did the majority of the time was a federal prison camp. And I went from being hanging around cholos and you know, the harder drug traffickers and things like that. And I got kind of taken in. I met a couple of guys who were very wealthy, just really walking. And, you know, funny enough, I don't know what you guys' spiritual beliefs are, but I was praying. I was like, how am I going to get through this? You know, and I hadn't prayed in a long time, but I was reaching out, and these two guys appeared out of nowhere, and they just kind of took me under their wing. And one of the guys ended up being he was the most wealthy guy in the whole place. He owned like 40 corporations and airlines, you know, movie studios. And he's the one that first taught me about how powerful corporate entities are. He's like, Andrew, I own 40 corporations. And he goes, I control everything and I own nothing. And that's how I don't pay tax. That's how everybody does this. And leveraging debt, and yes, and leveraging money, other people's money. We know this in real estate, OPM, you know, other people's money. What we don't know is how to access it from the banks and lending institutions and alternative funding sources on a large level. Because the more you learn to leverage capital, the more you're offsetting your tax liability and you're building your wealth. So there's controlled debt, you know, and controlled use of credit, and separating your personal plus your business credit, plus something most people don't even know about, which is bank credit. So there's 3 credits together combined, and you have access to unlimited money. So, and borrowed money is more powerful in a lot of ways than your own personal capital, because you're able to offset taxes with it. And if you don't have a good tax plan and strategy, as you all know, whether it's capital gains or whether it's just earning a high amount of money, they're gonna take a chunk if they can. So you got to think about that ahead of time before you're making the money, and then put that revenue back into the source. You might even want to start a foundation or a nonprofit, because where do you want to land it ultimately? So I know we don't really have time in this show to go through all that, but I call it flowing and growing money, because you're using these game board pieces, corporation, LLCs, land trust, and you're circulating money around. So the money's coming in, revenue's coming in. You're using it to pay for your staff, pay for your technical stuff, pay for if you're buying a piece of property or whatever, and then the money's flowing back out. What's your return on that investment? Where's the money coming from after that? The passive income, hopefully, in the end. And then where does it land from there? It just continues to flow and grow, So just that imagery right there changes a lot of stuff.
We had a gentleman, Chris Nigel, was on the phone. I definitely want to connect you with Chris Nigel. Great guy, another financier guy. And you're the second person to say, like, he used the analogy, and you did the same thing. Like, money is flowing consistently, right? He said, to his daughter, like, hey, do you want to drink from this stagnant pond, or do you want to drink from this thriving river? I mean, which fish do you want to eat, right? And I just think a lot of people just don't get that, because they think, well, you know what? Here's my bank account. I'm going to put my money in my bank account. It's going to make me 0.01%, and damn, I'm doing great. Yeah. When in reality, you can make a lot better decisions, is from what I'm hearing from you, right?
Yeah. Not only that, when you put money like that, like you're saying, in the bank account, you're losing money, because if nothing else, just from oh man, I'm mind blanking right now. Just from inflation, if you sit your money and park it somewhere where it's not earning something, you're losing, because your money tomorrow is not going to be worth as much as it is today. And you park it there, and you think it that way. And I love his analogy, because that's something I always say too. Like, everything's flowing in the universe, and if it stops, if it's blood, if it's water, if it becomes stagnant, you die. It stops, it becomes poisonous, so you have to continue to flow it. So using those kind of analogies, and you look at it throughout, whether it's money, whether it's relationships, whether it's your health, whether you have to keep moving. Movement is and the flow of life is the way it all happens. So this is just another way to look at that and use that same terminology and that same mindset into what we're trying to do here as entrepreneurs.
So here's a question for you. And this popped in my brain. I know, Gene, I think you have a couple of questions too. I saw you kind of raising your hand over there.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm going to ask one question. I'm going to let Gene take the throttle here for a second. But when you originally had that conversation, so you're walking around the prison yard, from your description, right? Or the prison, wherever you were, and these 2 gentlemen appear. They obviously weren't angels or entities. They were real human beings. But they stepped into your life for a reason. When they first befriended you and they first started talking to you, a lot of people probably might be having the same like moment of going like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, nobody's taught me this. But when you sat down and you had that first real conversation with him, and he looked at you square in the eyes, and he said whatever he said to you, and you're like, I get it. Explain that. What did that moment look like?
First of all, I just felt this. It was like you said, they were brought into my life for a reason. It was like I got mentors. I got granted some mentors that I wouldn't have expected. And not to mention, I was already seeking that knowledge. So as I was a social science major, and I, backpacked in Europe, and I drove across the US at 19. And, so I had these conversations with people from all over the world. And I was already having these ideas about capitalism and because I read the Communist Manifesto and the Wealth of Nations. And so I was getting ideas about how these different constructs had come about, how America was a big, basically, experiment for capitalism. That nothing in the world had ever seen anything like this, a free market society where somebody that could be dirt poor raise up and become ultra wealthy and own land and do things that in history that just wasn't possible. So I was already fascinated with all that stuff. And then it was another interesting thing that I was stuck in the prison I was at, because I had heard, and I can't verify this, but we had the highest average IQ of any prison in the country. So I was dealing with doctors who were like, you know, the guy, the sperminator, the guy that was inseminating women, and he, you know, they made a movie about him. You know, he was a genetic scientist, you know, he was teaching the health classes, and they were, you know, stockbrokers who were multimillionaires were teaching about the stock market and ups and downs, and economists. And, you know, we had this guy teaching about corporate stuff, and lawyers teaching, you know, it was incredible. It was like an MBA program that I couldn't have even asked for. And I was taking copious notes and sitting down and going to every class just to do my time. I was basically trying to work out, get healthy, and feed my mind. So I was, ironically enough, I read a ton of books when I was there. And the first book I read was The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump. Little did I know he would end up being the president, you know, this much further down the road. It's crazy to me to watch that, you know, because that was when I first decided real estate was going to be something I was going to pursue after I, you know, was finished with this chapter in my life. And, you know, because what I really got from it more than anything was corporations. You got to learn about entities. You got to learn about these things, because these are the biggest two vehicles. And, you know, all of us have read Rich Dad Poor Dad. He talks about the same stuff. You know, you want to use real estate and you want to use corporations in order to offset taxes and grow your wealth. Those three basic principles are what we're all trying to do. And if we have this mentality of flowing and growing using these things, then we're just directing that flow around in our direction. And we're getting the benefits from it and passing it on. You know, it's like karma or any other idea that we have about these, you know, what comes around goes around type of philosophies is, you know, you're taking it, you're enjoying it, whatever it is, and passing it along, you know. So giving back knowledge is just my way of finally circulating back out. And by the way, you guys are the first podcast where I'm actually talking in depth about my experience, because I was afraid to, you know, I some people are very judgmental when they just hear that I went to prison. Oh my gosh, you horrible person. I'm like, oh, I'm not that bad, I don't think, you know. But
small-minded people, man. You can't fix stupid. So don't worry about dumb. You know, I tell Matt that all the time, and he's coming around. Gene.
Sure.
Well, I'm in the right place then.
All right, let's get Gene in here. I know you've got some questions.
Yeah. There's a couple things I would like. One of them is actually an observation, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this part of it. And then the second part of it is a saying, but my neighbor gave me this saying a little while back when this whole COVID thing started, and it really got me thinking, and I would love to hear your take on it. But the first thing is, like, you're talking about flowing, money going and flowing. And I heard somebody refer to this, you know, the PPP, the payroll protection program that's going on right now, where the government's giving out millions of dollars to businesses to pay their employees. And this guy said to me, it's the biggest legal money laundering scheme that's ever been done. Because, I mean, and you know, if you think about how that works, the government's giving money to a corp. The corp, basically, they're feeding the people to be able to keep money rolling into the economy, right? So that's the one thing, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. The second one is a little bit shorter, and this guy said to me across the street, he was talking about, he's my next door neighbor, and he was talking about people struggling with their mortgages and all this stuff. And he said, you know, I heard this guy say one time, when you owe the bank $10,000, the bank has you by the balls. When you owe the bank $10 million, you have the bank by the balls. And I thought,
wow.
Like it took me a minute, right? But all right, so jump in there. No more of me. Go, jump in there.
No, I love that. And great example of the current circumstances. And it just goes to show you, at this point in time, if you're not having at least a side business, if you're not involved in something and you're just a W-2 employee, you're losing. Yeah. You're losing, and government is just initiating that. Like you just said, they're handing money to people for almost no reason. It seems that the world's gone crazy. Let's face it. We're going to stores and it's like, you know, we're wearing masks and stuff. It's like a sci-fi movie or something. Yeah. So it's a crazy time that we're in, and we've already entered into a recession, you know, at least an adjustment in the market. We all know that. There's more coming, but you know, it's started. We knew it was coming for a few years. It always does. Every 10 to 12 years, there's always an adjustment in the cycle. But so yeah, getting your business going, whatever it is going to be essential. And that's one of the things I teach. Even if you're a W-2 employee, get some kind of side gig. If for no other reasons, for more tax write-offs, you give yourself an instant raise. Work on your credit, your number one thing that you can leverage right away and get access to capital. And from there, learning the basics of business. There's plenty of courses on teaching how to market, how to online stuff, social media marketing, all this kind of stuff. But who's teaching about the back end? When the money's coming in, how do you grow that money?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you actually protect that money? How do the wealthy do that? Because most of them aren't sharing this kind of stuff. And goes back to when you're saying my first epiphany with these mentors was, they blew my mind. They were like, Andrew, you're going to learn stuff. And I got invited to their table. Basically those two friends of mine, Paul and Rod, they introduced me to all these other baller players. And I was the youngest guy at the table, and I was sitting eating dinner with these really wealthy guys regularly. And they took me under their wing. They really trusted me. They saw some potential in me, and they said I had a good heart and to use the knowledge wisely. And that's my way of giving back, is writing. Now, finally sitting down and writing some books and getting on shows like yours and sharing this information, because it really can be transformational, for.
So when it comes to these wealthy individuals that you met while in prison, and I'm assuming you're still staying in contact with because they're your mentors now, right? Did any of them ever talk about operating and using a whole life insurance policy as in a bank account versus putting it into the bank and then borrowing from yourself and doing compound interest? Did they go over that with you at all?
Not in depth. And to be honest, one of my great regrets is I did not keep in touch with them. This was back in 1997. We didn't have the internet. We weren't really, I got some of their information. And to be honest, I fell into a dark depression when I got out of prison, and I drank myself into oblivion for a few years. And so I lost touch with a lot of people. And I lost touch with my own self, to be honest. And I buried all this information, all this knowledge, and I was burying myself. And when I came out of that is when I, 6 months sober, when I spent 10 days in Hoag Hospital in Newport Beach and was fighting for my life back in 2004. That was September 9th is when I went in, and September 10th I count as my sober day, because that was the first day I didn't drink alcohol, and the 9th was the last day I've drinking alcohol since. But so yeah, I wish I would have kept in touch with some of them, and who knows, down the road we may end up meeting again. But they impacted me in a large way, and we didn't go so much into that at that time. I know what you're talking about, and I think it's super powerful. And leveraging and using any source, is these principles apply to whatever you can. So a retirement strategy and utilizing, making your own bank is what you're talking about, right? You're basically setting up your own financing to become your own bank. You can become a lender through your, and then you're tax free. If you're, so again, it's like starting a foundation or a nonprofit. I did learn that part where I feel like it's the full circle. Like you start with your own stuff, you start with a profit company, and then you're growing that wealth, and the extra money can go anywhere you want. You can donate it to charity, or you can give it to the taxes, and again, I'm not saying don't pay your taxes. You want to pay your fair share. You want to do what's right. But all I'm saying is leverage what is in front of you. The tax system's set up for corporations and wealthy, for wealth. Like you had pointed out, 10,000 in the bank and you owe the bank 10 million, and they're your best friend and your asset and your partner, because they expect you're going to use that money and make them money. So, again, that's learning. It's super powerful.
Tony Robbins always joked around the fact that, like, when he was busted as fuck and he didn't have a damn 2 nickels to rub together, he was trying to get banks to give him money, people to give him loans. He couldn't get it, and as soon as he had tens of millions of dollars, the bank was his best buddy, and they would give him any loan he could ever imagine. He's like, I don't need your fucking money anymore, man. Like, why didn't you?
Yeah.
Where were you when I was busted? And they're like, well, do you want the loan or not? He's like, no, get out of here.
Yeah, no, it's ironic. When you don't need it, then it's there for you. When you need it the most, it's not. But when people ask me that question and they're talking about, hey, I got a 490 credit score and I got this and I got that and I need money, and I'm like, well, don't just think in terms of the bank. First of all, you got to work on those scores, and where that all starts is integrity. You banks and lenders are looking for risk assessment. They're they want to safely lend money and get a return on the money. So integrity means, how are you living your personal life, your business life, everything? Are you tracking everything? Are you aware of making payments on time? Because it comes down to your word. If you say you're going to do something, do it, Now, which isn't to say you might run into unexpected problems, and that's where bankruptcy law and stuff comes into play. Our president has done it several times, and they're like, well, how come it didn't hurt him personally? Because he understood, his advisors and his team knew that separating his personal from his business was essential. So he could bankrupt a casino or a corporation, and it didn't affect him personally. And in fact, he could restructure everything, get new loans because the banks want their money still, and they'll restructure with you. And then he was able to leverage that and turn it into other endeavors, and we're going to fall down in life and in business. It's learning how to fall down and keep going, because as entrepreneurs, we all know we're not going to win every time. We're going to take chances. We're going to risk. We're going to grow. We're going to learn. We're going to fall down. We're going to get up, dust ourselves off, and keep going. So having that kind of mentality is what separates a person who just wants to show up at a job and punch in a clock and make a certain amount of money, and those that really feel like they can attain freedom, which is really my ultimate goal is, not to have to worry about any of this stuff and just become the best version of myself,
Well, so a lot of people shame are the president for bankrupting, right? But you're saying, look, it's not a negative thing. It's actually, he did a smart strategic business move. Now, you guys are going to probably beat me up in the comments. That's fine, whatever. but the fact of the matter is, but what I'm saying is that like him or not, I don't give a shit what your political preferences are, but he understands the rules of the game. And I guess that's, Andrew, that's kind of what you're saying, is understand the rules of the game so that when you're playing the game, you know how to beat the game, right?
100%. He even, in fact, I was watching the debates when he was debating with Hillary, and somebody had brought up about his bankruptcies, and he just goes, "I'm smart. I understand the system," and he knew 100%. He was like, "I don't feel bad about it. You guys want to shame me or make me feel bad, but the fact is, all the smartest, wealthiest guys do it and have done it. And when it's necessary, it's necessary. Restructuring happens. Acquisitions and mergers happen. So." Understanding it and taking your emotion away from it, because it's like I tell people, when I worked in mortgage, I was in the finance world from 2003. I worked in the mortgage business during the beginning of the, that boom period. And, I did really well during that time and did like a lot of people, and then lost it all in 2008. I lost all my investment properties. I lost my mortgage company, all that kind of stuff. So I went through that period where you had to recess, but I never looked at it as my identity. So when we don't look at our credit score as a badge of who we are, and we don't look at certain things in the way that society's trying to tell us we need to, then it allows you to have self-empowerment to do whatever it is you feel you need to do. What is your great gift that you can bring? What solution are you providing? Because we all have unique things, and we all need each other. So it's that sharing, that pool of information. That's, I think, the greatest thing on the internet is that we now have access to information on a level that the world has never seen, and that's super powerful,
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Especially the last part you just said right there. It's so powerful. We all need each other. We all are putting out something else out there that another person can feed off and grow from and become better from. And then we're doing the exact same thing out to other folks. So it's a very symbiotic relationship. And a lot of people, like you just said, you are ashamed of your past. You haven't told your story. This is the first podcast you've really gone in depth on it. But we don't know how many thousands of people that are going to hear this are going to resonate with you going, man, Andrew's he's a brave human being. He put his past out there for all of us to look at. None of us judged him in a negative light, but yet he had the nerve to do it. That's going to give someone else the encouragement to live their best version of themselves and do something that they're afraid of. So you're doing what you're talking about right now, man. How cool is that?
Well, and it's the same for you guys. I mean, we were talking before the show and you were giving me tips on equipment, and I'm entering into this whole new realm of podcasting. And you guys are already mentors. You're paying it forward. Whoever hasn't seen that movie, Pay It Forward. That's the basic principle we're talking about. We get it. We're conduits. I mean, let's face it. We're on this planet for a blip in the annals of time. Yep. Our lives are, if we're 80, 90 years, we're great. But the Earth's been here for billions of years. So if you really look at it in context, our lives are already over. We just slowed it down to a point that, we were trying to make sense of it, and we're leading for the next generation. And the biggest gift we can get, I got a 9-year-old son. And the biggest gift I can give him is the mentoring and empowerment to be the best version of himself, to not have to make the same mistakes I did, so that he can spread his light, and do whatever he can, and on, and that's our immortality, is our, our bodies last a certain amount, but that energy transfers to the next generation, and I didn't know that till I held the baby in my hand, who looked at me, and I felt like I was looking back at myself. It was profound, to say the least.
That's a trip.
So,
I have a good friend of mine, Jake Wolf. He cracks me up. He always says, you're living a non-infinite life. And I didn't really understand what he was talking about. I'm like, all right, you're cuckoo crazy town, right? But then I started listening. I really kind of started listening that you're living your non-infinite life. Really understand that you're not infinite. You have an expiration date. You don't know if that's today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next 10 years, 100 years from now. But like you're saying, you're giving back, you're learning, you're growing, you're becoming a better version of yourself. And so then when you wrapped your brain around this and you sat down and you busted out the book, what did that do for you, both mentally, spiritually, emotionally, financially, business wise? I mean, did it help hone in some stuff because you were able to wrap everything around in a nice, pretty little wrapper of a book? Did it get clarity in business? Did it kind of open up your mindset to how vulnerable you are and kind of how much you've been blessed by other people? I mean, walk people through their mindset, because Matt has written a great book as well, which I always bag on him for. But I mean, if you want to be micro famous, you can go learn how to get micro famous right here. But it's a great pamphlet, Matt. You did great. This coloring book was absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to hear the whole book.
Thank you. Yes, the fill in the blank coloring book, the paint by numbers book I created. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, Andrew, you didn't get like your first book. It's not about your story. Like, I think that's the one you're working on now. The money secrets are about really the information that you learn, that you're trying to help get out to people. So I know that there's probably I think you're about to go through that maybe cathartic experience of getting all the stuff that you've been through out of your head and onto paper, but that book hasn't come out yet.
Right. I look at it like a three book series, and that the first one was just kind of breaking the ice and like you say, sharing some of these things, learning the process of writing a book. It was definitely cathartic. It was, as you could probably attest to, is maddening at times. You get super critical on yourself and you feel like, but then you just you push yourself to finish and hopefully find the right mentorship. That's another thing I learned, is coaches and mentors in any stage in any game we're in are essential, and so that was big, and putting it out there. To me, it was just getting it done, and then when I got received the way it was, our coach, because Matt and I share a coach, and she was like, thrilled for me that it was, went to number one in several categories, and it reaches and changes lives, and that's really what it was about. I always say I didn't do it to sell books, that's for sure. It was to get that information out there and start the conversation, and now it's starting to take on a life of its own. Getting on these podcasts, going to be starting my business is growing, our email list is exploding, and it's just about helping more and more people and working on the next one soon. And that's going to be super emotional, I know, because I'm going to really have to revisit, Jakarta, Indonesia, 1993. And, when I had hair down to the middle of my back and I was playing guitar and just a carefree soul, going through the universe. And then all of a sudden I found myself in this crazy world, and I was just like, why me? But fast forward, I never thought I'd live to be this old, and here I am now, and I feel like I'm just getting started, so
yeah, that's a weird thing, isn't it? We mentioned it earlier, like we all still feel like we're in our 20s, and right. Yeah, I mean, granted, Ellie, like you and Gene have kids. I think that changes a little bit, like, of your perception. But Greg and I don't have kids, so like I still feel like I really still feel like I'm in my 20s, because I don't even have that responsibility of a child or something like that. But yeah, I don't know when that stops. It'll be interesting, because I feel like at my age, my dad was married and had all three of his kids and had accomplished, by my estimation, quite a bit. And I can't imagine him feeling at that age the way I feel now, which is that I'm just now getting started and just figuring it out. But I think it's true, though. Like we're coming into I mean, Greg, you just turned 40. I'm about to turn 40, something like that. Like we're all in that same.
I'm ahead of you a little bit on that. I turned 40. I turned 41 this year. I'm turning 42 in December, which I literally cannot get through my head that there's a 4 plus another number. Shut up. Another number behind it, because I mean, I just don't feel that old, right? That's a mental mind. That's a mental way of looking at things, right?
Give it a couple of years, you'll be.
I think like for all of us, just the next 10 to 15 years of time are going to be the most growth, the most impact. Way more impact than we've made up until this point. Yeah, it's interesting to feel that way, and to be at this age when my dad was, had already accomplished a bunch of stuff, and now I'm feeling for me, like the next 10 or 15 years are going to be way better than the last 15 years.
Yeah, 100%. Go ahead, Gene. I know you were wanting to mention something.
No. I was going to make a joke about how not all of us still feel like we're in our 20s. I get out of bed in the morning and I'm like, it hurts like shit.
What is your wife doing to you in the nighttime? Is she poisoning you slowly? What is happening?
I will tell you. I just got some inside information. We were with some friends over the weekend, and I hear her say to the wife, I'm surprised because he snores. She goes, I'm surprised he's not pissing blood in the morning for all the times I'm elbowing him and kicking him in the side because I snore a lot. So I was like, wait a minute, is that what's going on?
There you go. Man, you're waking up with bruises like an abused spouse. That's no wonder you're waking up feeling old, man.
But his wife's no joke, dude. She's in the medical field. She knows how to keep it under the shirt pattern, so bruises are shown outside the t-shirt. Okay, just body shots.
subtle damage.
Exactly. All right, Andrew. Let's finish out with this because our time is limited, and I want to make sure we get a little bit. There was a couple of questions that I wanted to ask selfishly. So in the book, you talk about how corporate credit is like the unicorn of the entire credit world. I've never focused on building corporate credit or business credit. Why should someone that's just a straight entrepreneur, you're making a high income, you're doing everything you can, you've got your LLC, maybe you've switched over to an S Corp, you're doing kind of those things that are standard operating procedure that your normal accountant will tell you to do. Why should you go down the path of building separate credit for just the business? And let's walk through that just for a few minutes.
Well, we kind of already mentioned it. I mean, having your business and personal life separate is super important. It's kind of like why in real estate, to use that analogy, why you would have land trusts or LLCs for each property you're holding it. Because if you got sued personally, you don't want to be liable to take everything from you. And it's the same in the business world, whether you're being sued or whether you're leveraging money. You want to be able to have that credibility. And let's back up. One thing in the book that I talk about that I want to make the point that everybody should understand. And in one of my talks, I Googled this when I was speaking in LA, and I said, what is a corporation? And one thing that I learned that's a great tool that you guys can all learn is all it is a legal person. It's your puppet. You become the puppet master of a puppet in this game. And so if you look at it like that, you're pulling the strings on something, and it's your buffer, your insulator from the tax world, the auditors, and from personal liability. Because when you got money, people want to come after it. They're going to sue you for it. They're going to audit you for it. If you don't have nothing, nobody cares. But as soon as you start becoming wealthy, as soon as you start acquiring money, then you become a target. So that separation is super important. Not to mention the magic happens when you got strong personal and business credit, because then you can access all kinds of money. And then as you create passive forms of income, then it becomes more, because you're open to more lending programs. So the sooner you do it in the game, because seasoning is a huge thing too. You get 3 years into your LLC or corporation, now you can apply for government funding and things like this. Whereas when you're first starting out, you only have access to certain amounts of kinds of capital. So yeah, it's getting it done and learning about it is really beneficial. And again, the internet's already starting to grow this whole thing. And the company that I'm partnered with for our coaching and our program to get you the corporate credit and capital, they're killing it in the game, because it's all about teaching and empowering and supporting. So because it is new,
Andrew, do you remember the days of the Shelf Corp?
Yeah, I do. And,
right. For the people that don't know what that is, explain that a little bit, because I think it put your mind around how important seasoning is, right?
Yeah, there was a time, especially when I was first getting in the game, and people were just starting corporations for that reason. They would start corporations just to season. and then they would sell a seasoned corporation, a shelf corporation. They'd put it on the shelf. They weren't even doing business with it, but they'd attach a bank account to it. In many cases, if they were smart, they would build business credit profile. And real quick, because we don't have a lot of time, you want to get what's called a Paydex score. It's your first FICO score for your business. And how you do that, you go to a company, it's Dun & Bradstreet is the one that, you know, how there's Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Well, there's Business Equifax or TransUnion. Equifax, Experian, and Dun & Bradstreet are the three. And Dun & Bradstreet's where you set your base for it all. So you want to get an 80 Paydex score as soon as you can, and it opens up and unlocks the credit separate where you're not giving your personal credit and you're still accessing credit and financing.
Really? It's attached to the business then, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
so
fascinating.
It is. And it's shocking to me at this point that more people don't know. And I talk to guys that are making millions of dollars and they've never heard of this. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And they're like, man, Andrew, had I talked to you 10 years ago, I could have protected this and I got audited and I lost all this money for that. And I was like, yeah, it's super important. So the sooner we learn it, the better. So empowerment, you know, down at the end where you can download my book for 99 cents. You know, I'm basically giving it away. There's a free pamphlet on our website to where you guys can download a free guide and get on our email list where we're sending out emails every week, you know, just educating, just teaching you about the different, because you can finance equipment, you can finance your cars, you can finance, you know, your computers, your anything we're talking about. You can, you know, there's corporate credit for Staples, Office Depot, Home Depot, Lowe's, all this. And you don't need a personal guarantee if you do this correctly. Your gas cards, all this kind of stuff. Walmart, Target, Amazon, they all have corporate credit programs. But you got to know how to unlock it, you know? Yeah.
That's crazy.
This is what infuriates the living snozzola out of me, is that there's all these programs out there, but yet nobody teaches the layman human being, because if it is taught to us, then we're not sheeple, and they can't profit off of every single thing we do in life. We're just told, go get a bank account, do this, do that, you know, show up to that, do that. When in reality, you're like, no, back the bus up a half a second. There's a better way of doing this. Let me show you what the ultra wealthy are doing. Well, why do we want to do that? Because they're ultra wealthy. That's why.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's one of the side effects of, shall we say, half the country believing that it is borderline immoral to even attempt to limit the amount that you pay in taxes creatively, shall we say, because then you're not paying your fair share, right? And they don't aspire to be extremely wealthy. And those are the people that are teaching our children. Not my children, of course, because fortunately I'm not having any. But anyway, other people's children.
Matt, what are you talking about? You got kids. Look at those chunksters.
Well, I find this is, Matt, what you just said is crazy, and I know Andrew's gonna like laugh when I say this, but don't you find it funny that and I think, Greg, part of the reason why the answer to your question is why don't people know? A lot of people have heard these things, and in my experience, like let's just say, for example, a self-directed IRA, right? Like that's a legal way to use your IRA to invest and make money back on it, right? And we used to teach mechanisms to do that, and people would go, "You can't do that. That's illegal." Mm-hmm. And I would say, "Oh, here's actually the step-by-step process on the IRS's webpage, which tells me that this is not illegal. It's actually something that you should be doing according to them because they put the time into it." But I always find it funny. I wonder what percentage of things do you tell people and they look at you like, no wonder why you were in prison, because you're doing this shit. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, but I'm being serious.
No, he brings up a really good and powerful point. And to illustrate this, I was telling a good friend of mine in the mortgage business, and she's been doing mortgages for 20 plus years, getting people into $500,000, $3 million loans. And when I told her what I was doing, that I was launching this book and I was teaching people how to separate their personal business, and she goes, "Oh, so you're teaching people how to commit fraud, so they can bankrupt a company and they can walk away from their debts." And then and I said, "Wait a minute,
holy cow!
You're talking people that are going to do that. Whether there's criminals in anything, just right. Because you empower them with knowledge doesn't mean that they're automatically going to do bad. For you to think that way and be in the lending world is crazy, because you get people into $1 million loans. What if they default? What if they, it's the same thing. Like what if they sell or flip a property, take the money and go to another country? You know what I mean? Like you can't think along those lines. You got to think in terms of, these are the rules of the game. We didn't make the rules up.
Yep.
And the rules constantly change. All we're doing is learning how to utilize them in the most strategic and the beneficial way to succeed. If we're going to compete in sports, we want every advantage, every knowledge, that we can in order to succeed. And it's the same in the business world. So having these tools and having this approach and this different mindset, and that's why I talk about flowing and growing, because let's take ourselves apart. We're the puppet master and we're learning to flow money. We're doing it through these things, these entities. These entities you can make up, these avatars, if you will, in the virtual world. Let's just say they're avatars, because they are legal people that can be sued, that can grow credit, that can have access to capital, that can have insurance, they can, all these things. And you get to be the one deciding what it is. You're the board of directors. You're the one sitting in the room and directing everything. And what Matt teaches is huge. And I'm learning from him about how to delegate and how to utilize a virtual assistant in order to increase what I'm doing. It's the same thing. There's a new skill set we're learning, how to leverage everything that is in our lives so that we can bring our greatest potential to whatever it is. Like, I'm good at certain things and I'm horrible about other things. Articulating this and teaching this and helping people to, I always say, educate, motivate, facilitate. We're educating people because they usually don't know about it. We're motivating them because it scares the shit out of them. A lot of times they're like, oh, I don't know if I can do that, And then we're facilitating when they get ready. When they're ready, we're here for you, And we got programs that hold your hand and walk you through the process.
Matt, I don't care what you say. We're going to keep Andrew. We're not letting him go back into the wild. He's going to stay with us.
Oh yeah,
he's going to teach us.
Because I was dead set against it. How dare you? Yeah, but Greg, I'm so thankful that you overruled me on this one. I appreciate that. Oh my God.
Can I share one more thing? I know you got to cut it off.
Yeah.
I want to share one more thing. And I think this is interesting. The first time I ever realized this was a game, right? That when what Andrew was talking about was really just moving shells around. I used to work with these two guys who ran a real estate company where they invested and bought. And I remember talking to them about it. And they said, we got hit in the face with some new bills today. And I said, well, what does that mean? They went to talk to their accountant, and the accountant said to them, you need to go out and buy new cars. And they were like, okay, so what? Like, what do we need to do? And he said, well, I'm looking at the S550 for you, Mercedes S550. And they were both like, that's $140,000 car. And he goes, yeah, and we're going to have to lease it. And they're like, okay, why? And he goes, well, because we need a big chunk of payment. We need that write-off. Like, you're making too much money right now. You have to write it off. It's either going to go to the government, or you could drive around in a $140,000 car. And they go, okay, that's awesome. So which one of us gets it? And he goes, no. You both have to buy one. And I was like, so here's what the deal was. They were making so much money that they had to go out and get S550s. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do.
Well, see, that's what Grant Cardone did. I mean, that's when he bought his like $40 or $50 million private jet, because he was going to pay like some astronomically large amount of money in taxes. So he just went out and bought a fucking jet, and he writes everything off because it's a business write-off, and he doesn't have to pay the taxes. Now he's got a brand new spanking jet.
Okay,
It's the game. It's the game. You remember Hummer back when I was doing the real estate back in the day? That was exactly what CPAs were telling realtors and stuff. You got to buy a Hummer. Why? For marketing purposes, and because it's a commercial vehicle and you can write it off 100%, depreciate it, sell it in a few years. So you're doing it to save money, to save revenue, and to increase your visibility, because it was a symbol. Now it's a symbol of a joke, kind of. Excuse me, all you Hummer owners, but
it's got to be. I was gonna say, I'll still take an original slant back Humvee anytime.
One of those, definitely. Yeah.
Dude, but not a bright yellow H2. That's a little aspiring rapper for me. That's not my game. All right, Andrew, where's the best place to get the book and get into your world?
Yeah, man. You can go to entrepreneurmoney-secrets.com, and again, it'll send you right to a link where you can download it for 99 cents on Amazon. And then you can also go to flowbusinessfunding.com, just like it sounds, flow, like flowing water, businessfunding.com, and you can download the free guide, and that'll opt you into our newsletter, and you'll be getting information, every week about different programs, different things you can do in the business credit world. So, just teaching, and jump on a call. You can set up appointments, and we can do a strategy session for any of your listeners who would like to know a little bit more and get some guidance,
So it's flowbusinessfunding.com, correct?
That's it. Correct.
And then I know we don't have time to answer this really quickly, but we have a gentleman in our show who is asking questions. And I believe, Jeff, let me get to you really quickly. Jeffrey, I would reach out to Andrew, friend of him on Facebook, somehow, but he wants to talk about what stage of career / dollar threshold do you recommend incorporating? So I'll let you guys have that private message and conversation. If you guys have any other questions like that, please reach out to Andrew and get those questions answered, because he is my new BFF. I love where his mind is on this one. Matt, you're fired from the co-hosting. Just want to let you know that the letter's in the mail.
Well, hold on.
Oh,
Flynn.
hey,
Hold
I
on,
got
Flynn.
I'm free. I'm free. Oh.
You're free. Go, my child. Go. Oh, man. It's too much fun. So, Volpe, where can people reach out to you?
I'll keep this short and sweet. GeneVolpe.com. There's a little widget out there. Hit it up, and I'll do the same thing for you that Andrew just offered. This is on the marketing side, of course. Just give me a buzz, and I'm happy to sit and talk to you about any of your needs.
Okay. And Matt, where I have this up for you. Hold on. If you guys want to reach Matt, that you can give him a call on that number right there. That is his personal cell phone number, or is it?
It's going to say you're 2 digits off on the phone number, and somehow managed to also spell my name wrong. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. Buddy. Love you too, buddy. Love you too.
I was moving too quick. Damn,
that's hilarious.
That's awesome.
That was awesome. All right. So for me, just go to microfamousbook.com. You can get a copy of the physical copy of my tiny pamphlet, as Greg calls it, of the book, How to Become Famously Influential to the Right People. So go there and get that. And then Greg, same question for you.
Guys, I'll make it really, really simple. You guys can easily just shoot me a message. I'm here on this number, 925-915-1978. That's my cell number. You can text me there. Either that, or you can shoot me a message on Facebook, shoot DM, or Instagram. Facebook, you're watching me right now, Greg McDaniel. Instagram is Greg McDaniel. The 3 letters REU for Real Estate Uncensored on Instagram. Follow me on all of those. Send me DMs, and we can go from there. So, Andrew, I know we didn't even get to scratch the surface with you. Would love it if you would be willing to come back and hang with us again with our motley crew over here and kind of drop some more knowledge bombs, because I think you resonate really well, especially with me. I like your honesty, your authentic, how authentic you are, your transparency, and the willingness to share. So, dude, I just dig you, brother, and I'm just really thankful that you're here.
No, you guys are awesome. It was an honor to be here, and you guys are brothers. I can already tell. I knew, Matt and I clicked right away, so I'm not surprised that he's surrounded by a great crew.
Yeah, so I appreciate that.
Appreciate you guys.
Cool. We do our best. He pays us every month, so it's okay.
It's a small stipend. It's a friendship fee. Okay, pay you guys to tolerate me. All right, so let's throw a nice navy blue bow right around this to tie this episode up, package it up. Let's do it.
Okay.
Greg,
there it is, guys. Go get the Entrepreneurial Money Secrets. It's right there. It is a phenomenal book, 99 cents. Follow Andrew on all of his social media, guys. Andrew, again, thank you. Gene, you're a legend. Matt, you are a man amongst men. I love every one of you guys. Guys and gals who are listening to this, please give us a 5-star review on any place that you are listening to our podcast. It really helps the search engines serve us up to other folks. Mention Andrew in this if you liked his content, and make sure you reach out to him. But you guys have a beautiful, blessed, powerful, incredible weekend. And until next time, peace out, angels.
See you guys.